Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts, and today is part 4 of my interview with Adam Franklin, who is the president and creative director of Creative Chops Studios. He has also worked on motion graphics for the films such as Iron Man 2 and The Fighter. Enjoy. What is something that you were proud of that you don't think gets mentioned enough?
Something I'm proud of that doesn't get mentioned enough. That's a tremendous question because there's so many facets that I've been through and gone through. Something that I'm proud of that doesn't get mentioned enough. Okay. I think probably one of my most proud moments, and this actually has some good stories built into it, would be the commercial that I wrote and was creative director on for Dan and Oikos.
Mm.
This was a opportunity that happened a few years ago, kind of at what I kind of see as the pinnacle and the height before we moved from Los Angeles. And that commercial as a whole, no matter how it came out on the back end, the amount of things that I learned from that commercial and working on that size budget, it was the first time that I was a part of one that was that size, I think was amazing on this end. And when it comes to mentioned enough, I mean, anything in commercials, unless you have a campaign or a commercial that just changes the industry or sets a tone forever, that kind of thing, commercials are forgotten. And for me, I think that knowing how I came through the competition and then what I did to talk Dan and Oikos into letting me creative direct on the spot, and then getting to work with the actors I worked with and all of that as a whole, that's the one that I really fall back on as such a wonderful experience through and through.
So talk a little bit about how you got that.
So it was another competition through Pop Tent. This is probably the last one I did with them. And Pop Tent put out a competition for screenwriters and for copywriters saying, hey, come up with ideas for a Super Bowl commercial for Dan and Oikos. I'm not sure how familiar you were back then, but like Full House was a major show back in the 90s, something I grew up watching and that kind of thing. TGI Friday. I mean, anyway, so I already knew all these guys and they were saying this is under wraps, but the guys are going to get back together and then they're going to push off, spin off this other Full House.
I did
series.
watch that. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah. So anyway, they said, come up with concepts and we are going to have a Dan and Oikos commercial with Stamos and Bob Saget and Dave Coulier. They're all signed on to do it. And best person can, best one wins kind of thing. Right. And it was for a flat amount of money and they just wanted the screenplay or they just wanted the commercial write-up. So I went through a bunch and spent so much time on it, sent it out there and ended up making it into the top 5. And then after I made it through the top 5, it came down to 2 of us. And they decided, you know what? Dannon loves both of them. We're going to shoot both commercials. Then we'll test them and we'll see which one goes and plays at the Super Bowl. And so keep going back to this whole Super Bowl commercial thing. And so, so I ended up going above and beyond and doing lots of rewrites and things that they said, well, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And so we just keep throwing so much against the wall. And I mean, I was just taking all this time coming up with all these different ideas and one-liners and all this stuff. And the reason I say that is because then my hope was I wanted to direct the commercial. And so I presented that to Dannon and to my contact there. And he saw all the work I'd put in and blood, sweat, and tears on it. And he goes, well, for a commercial of this size and magnitude and all that, we absolutely love your reel, but there's no way in the world that Dannon's going to sign off on this. But I can bring you into a creative director position on this. And so for me, that was huge. I said, absolutely, that's wonderful. So getting to be involved in that was amazing because in some ways I learned a lot about what I thought was directing commercials and what a real director does on commercials is completely different. And it's one of those things where it actually turned me off from the idea of the path I was on to try to become a national director for national commercials. Because I kind of got to see behind the scenes of exactly the role they play versus what I thought they played. Meaning, I'm guessing that, so for me, feature film directors do a lot of the different things we talked about, right? But when you are on a multi-million-dollar national commercial, the amount of people that you answer to as a director is insane. And it's not the amount of crew and those types of things, but I got to
Yeah.
see firsthand a director
You'll have
navigate.
people, yeah, you'll have people there that are like almost a focus group
Yes.
watching the commercial as you the
Yes.
commercial. It's like it's not
Navigate
even
that.
done.
Yep.
It's not even done yet. They're
Yep.
already giving you notes.
Absolutely. Navigate that video village of, all these
Yeah.
different people with marketing titles and all these different, I mean, and it was amazing to watch the process of it. And it's crazy to know what the idea was to begin with versus how the final commercial came out. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're so much happier, and sometimes you're like, what in the world they do to my idea and that kind of
What
stuff.
did they
But
do to my baby?
right, right. But as a whole, I think that it was it was amazing to me, even though maybe the final commercial didn't come out quite like I was envisioning through those months of working on this. It was still so amazing to watch it go through that process, and go through the blender. I mean, it truly did go through the blender, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
That's the
So anyway,
problem.
yeah,
There's a lot of mass, especially the commercials and stuff. Unless you're like, I know Ridley Scott does a lot of commercials and stuff. I'm sure he's not sitting there, they're not giving him a million to like, just go do what you're doing. But yeah, you're
yeah,
right. And
yeah,
with commercial directing, it's very much, a million masters,
yeah.
but since it's short, it's fine. When you do that with, and there are, I listened to, what was it, that last Hellboy they did? There
Hmm.
were producers on the set. So the director would give an actor a note, and then the producer would come up to the actor and say, ignore that note. Just don't do that one. It's like, how do you work with that?
Yeah,
You're having people there sabotaging the thing and be like, uh, so I told you that. Yeah, he said don't do that.
yeah.
No, he didn't. It was like, well, maybe I should just quit and go home. He could direct the commercial. No, 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 no. They want you still. They just don't like what you're doing there.
Yeah.
You get like a billion notes. So yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it goes through. Yeah, it gets, our demographic says that this would not work so well. So let's take that out.
Hmm.
Let's make this cereal here. Let's
Hmm.
put this here. I don't like that car he's driving. Let's change the car. Like a million things. It's just like,
And
it,
yeah,
yeah,
I had one of the greatest understandings of myself. I had to grow up real fast in that moment, uh, taking on the creative director position. I'll just share one story
yeah,
from it, which
yeah.
was we were probably about a week out from shooting, and we are doing wardrobe with all of the cast. And so this is the first time I had already met John Stamos the day before, and we had talked over stuff.
Yeah.
But this is the first time meeting Bob Saget. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
That man's awesome.
Right.
So
He's great.
Bob Saget walks in.
Nothing like who he plays.
Definitely not Danny Tanner for sure. But a very, very sweet man. But Bob Saget walks into this meeting, and we've got our table read set up, and they're trying to get fit for wardrobe, things like that. So director's handling all of that, but I am pretty much the liaison to Dan and Oikos, meaning
Mm.
whatever their bidding is, that's what I'm doing. And so as creative director, I'm sitting beside, the Dan and Oikos group, and Saget walks in and, sits down nice enough. And then they bring out pictures of what they want him to wear. And the whole idea is Bob Saget is in a grocery store shopping at a grocery store. That's it. That's all you need to know. And so they bring out different clothes, and Saget says, yeah, no, none of those going to work for me. I want to wear a suit. And I go, okay, okay. So can you take me through that a little bit? And he goes, the suit's my brand. Like, nobody will recognize me without a suit on. No tie, just suit. And I'm sitting there like, okay. And I lean over, and the Dannon exec says, absolutely not. And I go, okay. And he goes, you have to tell him.
Of course.
And so for a good 5 minutes in front of everybody, I am trying to find out how in the world to manipulate Bob Saget into not fighting for wearing a suit in this commercial. And it's amazing. He's shutting me down every time. And I know he's doing it for fun at this point. I am
Oh,
going,
really?
oh yeah, I'm trying everything I can. This is my first interaction with him, right? And so we don't know each other at all. And so once we get about 10 minutes in, it's not like he's not budging on this whole thing. He has to wear a suit. And I even said, like, well, if you did your own shopping and went to a grocery store on a Saturday morning pushing a cart, like, what are you going to roll up in? He's like, a suit. And he just smiled at me. I was like, oh. Anyway, long story short, if you go back and watch the commercial, Bob Saget is wearing a suit. He is wearing a suit coat. And yeah, so we kind of
I'm
caved on that
surprised because in in Full House, he was kind of like wearing, he did have like the appearance of a suit, but it
one. Right.
wasn't always like the jacket.
Well,
It
yeah,
was
for
more
him,
just
I think he probably put Full House in the background a bit in his life. He's just talking about in stand up and
okay.
in his present career. That's how, yeah, it was one of the craziest moments. And I have to go toe to toe with Bob Saget right here. And I'm like, what? Who am I? Like in that moment, I was like,
Yeah.
what did I sign up for? This is insane.
But the idea of the commercial is to kind of replicate somewhat Full House, right? I mean,
uh,
no,
yeah, I
you
mean, no, not really in that regard. It was just bringing back those characters.
just bring
Um,
back those gear. Okay.
who
Yeah.
hadn't been together in public in years and years and years after the
Yeah.
fact or whatever. So, but and then after that, we got along so well, and man, I got to hear some of the Bob Saget jokes that I'd heard or told,
Yeah.
and
Oh
they
yeah.
did not disappoint. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. As a whole, it was such a wonderful experience. But yeah, that's one that'll always stick with me.
Did
When
he tell you the aristocrats joke?
not in person, I'm very very aware of the aristocrats joke though.
He does like the best version of it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like the I wish they put that documentary out now so that people can realize,
Oh yeah,
here's a real offensive joke.
right,
you know,
right.
here's what you really think. You know,
Yep,
you
yep.
think that's offensive? Here's this.
Here's this. Good luck.
So getting back to the executives, why were they so dead set against the suit?
No one
Just
knows.
because
Yeah,
no one
and I
they
I
didn't.
was not in the position other than trying to bring two groups together. I was
So
not going to question.
they would just say no,
They just
and
said
then you
tone
would go
wise,
back there.
they said it makes no sense. Everybody's going to be looking at this dude in a suit in the middle of a grocery store shopping,
Yeah.
and they just thought it made no sense, and it was silly for him to push for it, and he thought it was silly for them to not want his suit.
So how did they? So they finally caved to it. Like what was it? Like what? After an hour back and
When
forth, they just were like,
when I had exhausted every way, and I'm a pretty manipulative guy when I want to be, right? And I had
yeah,
tried everything. And after the smile and because this is what I would wear,
yeah.
at that point, I knew we weren't getting anywhere and we are wasting time. And there are 30 people in this room listening to this whole conversation happen. And I said, okay, Bob, I was like, no problem. You know what? I'll talk with Dannon and we'll all, let's talk about this at a later time. Let's keep moving kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, even just trying to talk him, the way that he gave in a little bit was getting him to actually just try on some of the wardrobe. Can we at least get you in pictures in the other wardrobe that was picked out and in a suit? And then let's reconvene. So it was one of those things where you're just massaging it
Yeah.
all the way down the street until they finally said, you know what, we have so many other things we have to take care of. He can wear the suit. We don't care.
So it's a good experience to see how it is, but you're like, this is not something I want to do like
Yeah.
every single week, every single.
Yeah. Yeah. I everything about doing that, it's amazing. Everything's give and take, right? So when you work on multi-million-dollar projects, you get the coolest toys and you get these huge, you're renting out this whole grocery store for a day. And
Yeah.
they've got their trailers set up. I mean, it's just this big event. And that part of it I absolutely love. And
Yeah.
the speed at which you go is much slower because you're moving this huge landmass of crew and all these types of things, right? So the
Yeah.
days are much slower. So I do like all of that about it, but the creative process gets completely taken out in my mind on the day. You can't have, if they have spent that much money, you can't veer left or right unless something
Oh
major
yeah.
happens. It is so scripted that there's no room for any of that part of the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to go, well, let's try this or let's
Mm-hmm.
try that. Yeah. They're not going to do that.
Yeah. And I love that part about like run and gun shooting guerrilla style
Yeah.
commercials, which I think in this day and age now, like it's perfect. It lends itself so much because costs have come down, which means the amount of money you can make at commercials has come down a ton.
Yeah.
So you can't, unless it's something specific, you can't really get deep into that. But then also the amount of flexibility that you have to be able to do a whole bunch of different things with the commercials, I think is so much better now. So when it comes to social media type stuff, the run and gun commercials, I personally love
Mm.
because you can do a whole lot more with a lot less.
Yeah. Talk about directing the actors, like because you've directed actors and you were also on that set and the Dannons. Talk about how you what you learned from that.
Sure. So I'll start with that one.
Is there an IMDb for commercials?
No, and that
There
is,
really
yeah,
there really
I,
isn't.
no, not
Or music videos. That's
right.
another one that I because I've interviewed people. I didn't know after the fact that like he actually directed Smells Like Teen Spirit. Like probably one of the most,
Who did?
from Nirvana,
Yeah.
one of the guys I interviewed.
Oh,
But it's
nice.
like, but like you're not gonna be able to find that up. There's no IMDb, of music videos or
Right.
of commercials.
No, I've always thought that it needed to be there. There are a couple of smaller ones, but nothing to that level because,
Yeah.
if they hadn't fought for credits for part of their pay, back in the day, then feature films, you wouldn't know any of the crew. But because all of
Exactly.
that got done early on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually talk about that a decent amount sometimes with people. It's like, you're not going to ever see my name at the end of a feature film
Yeah.
or the guys that I worked with. But
Yeah.
we did so much. I mean, but you'll see plenty of the post production people who actually edited the film, kind of thing. But in
Yeah.
some ways, if you don't have these creative advertisers that can set this film up for success,
Yeah.
then it's not that I want my name at the end of a movie like that for that reason, but it's very interesting
Yeah.
to know how many hundreds of people go into films that you never
Oh
even see in
yeah.
that long laundry list.
Well, that's why I always stay at the end of a movie, and people are like annoyed with me and like, yeah, but I'm showing respect to the film.
Yeah,
These people worked really hard on this.
that's cool to
And
hear
it's
you
like,
say that.
no,
Yeah.
let's. They're like, no, we should go. Like, who are you showing respect to? Like, especially in big budget films. I mean, sometimes the credits could be like 10 minutes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Avatar 2 is like a 10 minute stinger
Yep.
of the credits.
Yep. I
Everybody's leaving.
we do
It's
that all
like,
the time. Yeah, and I think that became just being out in
yeah,
LA. I mean, that's what most people do. It's more of a sign of respect, if nothing
yeah,
else.
same here.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'd still argue with people. I'm like, if a film's really good, I usually clap after it's over.
I know, right?
I'm like the only person doing that. It's weird. But yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So getting back to the directing
Yeah,
of the
yeah. When we talk about the directing side of things, when it comes to that Dan and Oikos commercial, it's amazing to actually watch this director navigate the waters of all these different personalities and especially the marketing side of things and being able to say, yeah, no problem. And all these things, what I learned the most probably from him was how calm and collected. He's Canadian. He's just chill. And how calm and collected he was in any situation, even though we both knew the building was burning down at certain moments, but he never ever showed it. It's like a good quarterback, the
yeah.
highs aren't too high, the lows aren't too low. And it's the exact same thing with the director. And that's exactly a big part that I learned, that people are already freaking out. And if they look to the person in charge and the person in charge is showing any kind of freak out or any kind of
Oh,
major emotion, it'll,
it'll go right into the thing. It's you have to almost act like, yeah, we lost the set, it's burning down, everything's going, it's like, oh, okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
And then just being genuine, which I always try to do as well. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's always been me in the nutshell anyway. But to see someone so genuine on that Dan and Oikos set when it came to the crew and the cast and just all the different moving parts and things, um, gratitude and being genuine will take you miles in this life, no matter what it is. And it's amazing
Absolutely.
because you hear lots of stories of people who aren't those things that make it to the top, and we see that. But
Mm.
those who are those things, I think they shine in such a bigger and more powerful light
Yeah.
because they do have the opportunity to not be those things in their
Yeah.
role, but when they are, it makes the set better, it makes everything else better. So I would say that was the biggest things that I picked up on from the Dannon, and then just the process when it came to the storyboarding, the laying out, because it's a specific process to try to hit a 30. And this director knew very, very well how to hit a 30-second spot. Like,
Mm.
how many cuts can we actually have? How many words can be said? All that kind of stuff. And we came in very thick,
Did
script
he
wise.
already? Did he already? Did he know that the cuts when he came in, or was that something that he would come to and discover?
So he already had ideas on that the script was too long, but he
Mm.
had ideas already that he'd worked through as they went through, you know, hiring him and signing him on, that he knew were ideas that he thought would make it work better and would also get around the problem with being able to hit that 30-second mark and hit it effectively. And so our last night of pre-production, I'll never forget. We were like, all right, let's call in some food because we're going to be here for a while. Because until we can pace this out and we all agree this is 30 seconds, nobody leaves, kind of thing. And that's
Yeah.
what happened. And, you know, pulling down storyboards and redrawing storyboards and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that process is tedious. That's probably my least favorite process because I enjoy putting puzzles together, but, you know, puzzles that haven't even, you can't even see them yet. It's kind of difficult. I like the
Yeah.
puzzle putting together on the post-production side more than on the pre when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I learned a lot about that with it. When it comes to my set, when it comes to directing, it's being genuine, being authentic, but being very positive
Mm.
throughout. Because anytime I get a moment to step on set, anytime I get this opportunity, it was so long coming, and it was something that I had to fight and claw for so many years. And it was something that I
Yeah.
dreamed about for so long that every time, no matter what it is, it could be a very low budget thing that I'm just doing, you know, not for the passion or for the money or whatever. I'm still so happy to step on set because
Yeah.
it's kind of like I've earned this. And it's this just being grateful for this opportunity that I get, because you never know, it might be your very last chance
Uh-huh.
when it comes to be able to step on a set like that. So those, and then just treating crew like human beings and actors with
Yeah.
respect. Respect
Yeah.
goes a long way, and you know,
Yeah.
it's earned. And so you can earn respect from the entire crew by the way that
I
you
mean,
treat
we
everybody.
we we joke about that, but you know, if you've been on different sets, you will see sometimes that is not there. You
Yeah,
know, they do. You know, I remember being on a set and the director of photography and the wouldn't give me a second take, and I'm just like gratitude and respect, like you said.
right.
Although some people believe that the messier the set, sometimes the better the movie.
I can see that. I can see that. Probably not my style, but
Whereas we're like, they look at what was it, like Star Wars or whatever, it's like, all this went wrong, Jaws, the shark didn't work, but then
right.
but it's like, so I don't know, it's weird. On the Dannon commercial, how would the director direct somebody like a Bob Saget? Like what would he do?
So I would say it probably. So John Stamos had the biggest personality of the three,
Mhm.
and he was the one that was signed on with Dannon. So he had the multi-year deal. So
Yeah.
it was Stamos kind of bringing on his buddies for this bit. But it's good to know that going in, because that has a whole lot to do with who you answer to, how you treat people, and things like that as a director. Is, you know,
Yeah.
knowing the politics behind anything is always a good way to keep yourself out of trouble and then
Yeah.
to also flourish. So the way that I
Although
would
he seems
say,
like a chill guy, though,
yeah,
Stamos. He's
yeah, he's pretty chill. I would say that there are times where, and I think he would say the same thing, where, you know, he really wants the product to be
yeah,
great at the end of what he's doing. And so I think he gets in his head a bit when it comes
yeah,
to some of the lines or whatever it was, like just trying to really, like, trying to shine a mirror back and say, how does this really look? You know, he
yeah.
wanted a whole lot of that kind of feedback, which I fully understand. So on set, I would actually say Bob was probably, well, Coulier was the chillest, because
Yeah.
that's who he
That's
is.
what I that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I would say that Bob was probably the second most, and then John was probably probably the one that needed the most reassurance that this was
Yeah.
going to be funny and this was going to work.
Yeah.
So
And
many
then,
doubts creep in at the 11th
and they
hour.
just don't realize that like it's just like doing a play or whatever. You're like, is this funny? It's like you kind of have to just trust the work.
Yeah.
If you attack it too much, it's like it's kind of only getting in the way. And on set, you especially with something like that, where
Right.
it's very cut, you don't have a lot of time to, play around with stuff.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a good example of that would be when you were asking about how he would direct. It was mainly from a video village, and so off camera where we were, and then there was one scene in the cashier line where we had locked in on what John was going to say and his line. And when he said it, he didn't believe it. Like coming out of his mouth, he goes, "This isn't, guys, this doesn't work," kind of thing, right? And so then everybody's all critical, hands on deck, like, "Oh no." And so in those moments, that's where I would see him, instead of staying in the video village, he would for a second. He's like, "Hey, try this line," because we had alts set up, and he tried it, and then you could tell the thing was going off the rope. So yelling cut, he would go out there and just have a one-on-one conversation that I was not privy to, um, with John, and just talking through, getting a good sense of why is it not working for him, and getting a good sense of where would you like it to go, or what is that, what can we fix on this thing, and just trying to make sense of those moments, because I rarely have been in front of the camera. I'm always behind the camera, but having a good sense of those who are in front of the camera, and understanding like what you are going through in
Yeah.
those moments to be believable and to give the best product possible, and to do your best job doing what you're doing. It's amazing to me. Great acting is one of the greatest skills I've
Yeah.
ever seen in my life, honestly. And when you see it happen, you go, "Wow, that's amazing." When
Yeah.
they can just turn it on, kind of thing. I have such respect for that, because that's not me. But so anyway, that's the main thing, was just being, calling side conversations, being one-on-one, just having that
Yeah.
approach where we don't make this
Yeah.
thing a whole public thing, even though publicly everybody's freaking out because,
Yeah.
we're burning time, and the
Yeah.
main
Everything's
actor
real
is not
time.
happy and all this kind of stuff. So
Do you think his critiques were justified?
Stamos?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think he had a point, or so? Okay. So they were good thing. It wasn't like it's kind of
Yeah.
hot in here. Let's change the.
I think it was interesting because that by that point, it's one of those things where you're like, I don't even remember what it was
Yeah.
supposed to be, because we had gone through, I don't know, 40 rounds of alts and whatnot. And so I'm taking notes and I have all these things of alts
Yeah.
and lines, but we'd done so many rewrites that it had become this whole thing that wasn't what it originally was, to such
Yeah.
a level that he could be right, he could be wrong. I wouldn't have known at that point. I was so detached versus when you're living
Yeah.
it and
Because
you're in it.
you're kind of just like, okay, we gotta just get it done. You feel like you're never gonna get it done. Like
Yeah.
when you're doing it, it just feels like you just have it in that idea. It's like, okay, we'll get
Yeah.
it done.
And
Like,
it could be because, I mean, Stamos checked off on everything,
yeah.
and beforehand. So it could just
Yeah.
be the way the wind blows that day and the way it comes off, when he's in the moment, he's actually in
Yeah.
the, working along the other actor, and just goes,
Yeah.
"Hey, this does not feel right." So for whatever reason, I wouldn't say it was, yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
off, off
Yeah.
color or anything, or
Wasn't
any
it
reason.
wasn't Gloria Swanson, and like, I need more time. I need more film.
Yeah,
Look at me. I
exactly.
need a close up. Just me. We're selling it. No, just do it about me.
Right.
um, Okay, that about does it for this interview. I hope you enjoyed part 4 of my interview with Adam Franklin. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider checking out the YouTube channel. And I will see you next time on the DMF.